When I was flagging my anticipated reads for 2022, I noticed a bit of a trend with a few of the books that I had selected or had my eye on. They had one thing in common, and that was the moon. And I decided that I was going to do some sort of mashup vlog review type thing with these books. I thought that would be creative and cool, so here I am doing that. The first two books that I decided to put together, I put together because they came out in January, and that is How High We Go in the Dark and Daughter of the Moon Goddess. These are two really cool books to pair together. Both of them have an Asian flavor to them. So Daughter of the Moon Goddess is based off of a myth, a Chinese myth, and How High We Go in the Dark is mostly centered in and around Japan or people with Japanese descent. We're going to do a scale of new moon to full moon. We're going to take new moon as the most metaphorical interpretation all the way to full moon, which will be our more literal interpretation. How much does it actually have to do with the moon? This is not going to be a way of defining enjoyment or comparing them in their literary merit, more so just their actual moonness, as it were. It's a nice frosty morning. Everything is gorgeous, and I just had to, I had these fresh thoughts in my brain and I just needed to get them out. I just finished reading How High We Go in the Dark, and I have so many thoughts. This is like a book it's weird, it's wonderful, it's bizarre, it's heartwarming, it's interconnected, I don't know, does a perfect book exist? This is a book where the trigger for everything that happens is there's a body of a young girl found, a Neanderthal girl, found in the Arctic, and they go in and investigate it, and what ends up happening is there's a virus that's released onto the world, and then there's a plague, and it's about humanity kind of just carries on. And I think the biggest thing that I would take away from How High We Go in the Dark is community and how people come together and try and make everything just a little bit better for everybody else. Basically, it takes place over like the next 100 years, like what happens, and without spoiling too much, the cover was a perfect choice. Phases of the moon and how we as a society can wax and wane. And I'm not going to go like too much in detail with that, but I just think that's pretty perfect. Every single chapter is told kind of like a short story. They're all interconnected. They are all interwoven. This would be a book that is really good on a reread because you can find even more threads as you read it even more. Because this was structured in such a way that you could read a chapter and then that character was gone and you would read another chapter. I really enjoyed that. There were some that I absolutely adored. I might even go back and reread them. It was so lovely. It was so lovely. It was like the perfect book to read. I did my initial reaction to How High We Go in the Dark on my frosty morning walk, and since then I've had a lot of time to think through it, think through some of the things that I really wanted to touch on and that I didn't touch on when I talked about it. One of the things that I didn't mention was that there is a lot of discussion about grief and death and the business of death and how people deal with death. This was kind of hard-hitting in that regard. I really enjoyed some of the discussions that were had. There was one chapter in particular that I was describing to my husband. It's called The City of Laughter, and it's basically it's Disneyland. It's basically Disneyland. And as I was describing it to him, I was like, we already have this. I mean, okay, we don't have a euthanasia park. So the City of Laughter is where they send children to go that are basically doomed. They're already on their deathbed. There's a lot of debate about euthanasia and about whether or not that is the right thing to do. And I don't think the author is taking one stance or the other, but it's certainly explored. The thing that I really liked about this discussion was, do you give the children the best day of their lives? Do you tell them beforehand? What do you do? It became really real for me when I was discussing it with my husband about what would you do in that situation? And it became really emotional for me. And I think that's another reason why this book, I would say, is hitting me a lot harder than some other books, is because it made me think about those things. I had a great conversation with my husband because of this book. There were a couple of other chapters that really stuck with me. There was one chapter that was absolutely, it was one of those, is it a dream? Is it real? Is it metaphorical? Like, where are we now? We were suddenly in the real world and now we're not in the real world, and I don't know what's going on, and I kind of really loved it. And in terms of whether or not I would give, how many stars I would give this one, this is a 5-star book. This is incredible. I need to go out and purchase this book and own this book. It struck me in my little heart spot, and I want people to read this. I want people to experience this visceral exploration of death and community and how humanity goes on, because I think that's what we need right now. We need that confirmation that we're going to be okay, and we're going to be okay. So if I were to rate this new moon to full moon, I would rate it as waning crescent. So it is pretty metaphorical in its tangential relation to the moon and approaching literal, but not at all literal. Not at all. Not full moon literal. So the reason why I would term it metaphorical, the way that the story approaches phases of humanity could be like the phases of the moon. The reason why I say it's metaphorical, but not full new moon, is that there are moons on the cover. I mean, like, there's moons on the cover, so, like, what did moons actually have to do with the story? Not a lot. There was some planetary exploration, but that's not moons. There isn't a lot of moon relation. There isn't a lot of discussion of moon in this particular book. There's space, there's planets, but there's not moon. So for that, waxing crescent. And this was one of those books where it just took me on a journey, and I really enjoyed, absolutely loved the journey that we went on. Halfway through Daughter of the Moon Goddess, and I'm loving the adventure that we're on right now. It is not what I expected it to be. I don't know what I expected it to be. This was one of those books where I saw the cover, I saw people were totally into it. I honestly didn't read the back at all. I didn't really do my research as to what it was about, except that it was based off of Chinese mythology. So far we are following the daughter of the moon goddess, and she has to leave the moon where her mother is, the moon goddess, and she ends up becoming a companion for a prince. And I absolutely loved this section. This was part 1, and this was the sort of romantic side of things. She trains with him, she learns with him, she does calligraphy with him, and they gradually fall in love with each other. And it's super sweet and super cute, and they go on dates, and they love each other. And then of course there's a hitch in their plan. He becomes betrothed to somebody else because he's a prince, and she is a commoner because she can't reveal who she is for reasons. And I got to part 2 just before the midway point, and all of a sudden she's fighting like monsters and stuff, and it's taken a total turn. There's been a multiple headed beast of some sort, and then what was really cool was a giant octopus. So far, having not read the back and knowing what this is about has actually paid off for me, and I think I'm enjoying it a lot better. Daughter of the Moon Goddess was everything that I wanted and needed at this moment in time. It was just so fun. I absolutely adored it. I loved the main character and how she persevered. I loved the love triangle. I don't normally like love triangles, but the two love interests that sort of intersected and crossed over and vied for attention was just, it was great. Using my moon scale, I would rate this as waning gibbous. So it's almost full, but it's coming away from full. So it is literal in the sense that the main character is the daughter of the moon goddess, and her mother is in charge of making sure that the moon rises and falls every night. And it's not so much metaphorical, it's not really a stand-in for anything. It's based off of a myth. She gets sent to the celestial realm, which is away from the moon. So she grows up on the moon, but we don't particularly spend a lot of time there. So I would say we're coming away from the moon. If she was on the moon the entire time, or for at least 90% of the book, I think I would say full moon, absolutely. She's mostly in other realms. She's in the celestial realm, she's in the mortal realm, she's checking out other realms, the demon realm, like all these realms. I'm not going to go into any spoilers, but there is a betrayal by somebody whom I absolutely loved, and I just didn't see it coming, and it added so much to the book. This is a book where there is something happening all the time. There is no lull. It is just one thing after the other. It is fantastic. It moved at a clip, and it's kind of put me in a slump now, and I have no idea what to read right now. I have checked out like 10 different books, and none of them are giving me the thing that that book gave me, and so I would give this a 5 star. I adored this, and if you're a fan of Sarah J. Maas, you would be a fan of this book. I love Sarah J. Maas. I am trash for Maas. However, I would say this kind of kicks it out of the water. It's fantastic moon pick. Go me. High five. Well done. And I'm gonna wrap up my vlog here because otherwise this is going to be way too long with way too much footage. So here it is, 2 moon books, How High We Go in the Dark and Daughter of the Moon Goddess, both 5 stars. So we'll see if my next pairing of books that come up are also 5 stars. Here's hoping, fingers crossed. Thank you for watching. If you like what I did here, please like the video. I post every Tuesday at 8 a.m. Sometimes I do some extra things here and there, and I'm hoping to get more done. So thanks for watching. Bye.